And if you have questions, please raise your hand. I see that B has raised his hand. Do you want to ask something?
Yes, you mentioned about at the end of the class to take attendance, but last week we were there waiting and you didn't do that. Is that like a choice that you made, or is it just like something different, or?
Yes, that was sort of a choice I made just because we ran long. But
Got it.
ordinarily, assuming we don't run over the 6 o'clock time frame, I'll make sure that I do that at the end.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sorry for you waiting last time. Did you have another question? Okay. Just a reminder of our schedule. I just mentioned we have spring break and current issues as the next 2 classes, and then we have Michelle Horowitz, who is the Chief Marketing Officer currently for Blink Fitness, but prior to that, Diane von Furstenberg. Brigitte Bogart and team will be joining us from New York & Company. Rebecca Gross and Laura Folks will be joining us from Michael Kors. And our final speaker of the semester is Fashion Services Network, who will be speaking a little bit about how you build your own career path from an HR perspective, marketing yourself out there. So I think it'll be a really great way to finalize the semester. And then we will have a final for the last class on May 18th. Okay, so one last flash the question. If you want on-time attendance, please make sure to send me the answer to your question now. And with that, I will move on to introducing Adrianne. So Adrianne is currently the president of North America for Kate Spade in the Tapestry Group, based in New York City, where she leads a team of 4,200 people in real estate and wholesale. She was previously I'm sorry, I just realized I forgot to post my updated version, where she leads the teams across the field and corporate for all direct-to-consumer and wholesale channels in North America. She was previously global head of inventory management and global pricing for Tapestry and global merchandise planning for Coach. Ms. Kirszner has over 20 years in experience in the retail industry and has a proven record of driving business results and building best-in-class teams. Since joining Tapestry in 2009, she has led teams in North America in merchandising, planning, allocation, and store operations. She's been the global leader for planning for the past 4 years, prior to her current role, where she's responsible for Tapestry's inventory, buy plans, and global pricing strategy. Prior to joining Tapestry, Ms. Kirszner was an SVP at Ann Taylor, where she led merchandise planning, store planning, and allocation functions for Ann Taylor stores, in addition to spearheading reorganization and evolution across the organization. Before joining Ann Taylor in 2004, Ms. Kirszner was at Victoria's Secret Beauty, where she led the merchandise planning team. Her previous experience also includes roles at the Monet Group, Hearst Book Group, and St. Martin's Press. She has an MBA from Stern School of Business at NYU and studied undergrad at Kenyon College. Please join me in welcoming Adrianne.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's so nice to be with all of you. I wish I could actually see all of your faces, but it was nice. Oh, now I can see faces, which is great. Yeah. So, appreciate everyone making the time. I know we're all getting used to this new remote way of working. But when Caroline and I first started talking about me joining you, I was so excited to have the opportunity to meet all of you and share a little insight into my experience and also make myself available for any questions that you may have. So I thought I'd just start out by giving you a little preview or just insight into my career path. So I did go to Kenyon College, which you may or may not have heard of because it's a really small school. It's a liberal arts school out in Ohio, and I was an English major. I actually thought I was going to be a writer when I went to college, so I majored in English. And when I graduated with a BA in English, I thought my obvious next step was to go into publishing. So I started my career in publishing at St. Martin's Press, and then I went to the Hearst Book Group. And what was interesting for me is that I still am an avid reader and writer, but I learned pretty early on that publishing was not the right career for me. And that's always, oh, my microphone's not good. Is that what can you guys not hear me?
I hear you well.
Okay.
Son, are you having trouble?
I just got a little chat. It sounds not very clear. Okay. I'm getting mixed messages, so I'll try to, okay.
I hear you okay.
Okay, so definitely okay. I'm going to keep going. I'm
Okay,
seeing
yeah.
before that you guys can hear me. Okay, so I'm sorry for those of you who can't. So anyway, I started my career in publishing, and what was interesting for me is when I looked up at the people who were senior to me, there was no one I especially wanted to be. So I loved the people I was working with. I loved being around books, but I didn't see any job that I myself really wanted. So I decided to start over. And I think that's kind of my first piece of career advice for all of you is love what you do. And if you find yourself in a job where you are not excited to go every morning, and I know right now we're in a situation where we get out of bed and we go to work in the same place, but for most when the world gets back to normal, that you're really excited to go to the office and you're really excited to learn and grow, that is so key. So I knew I didn't feel that in publishing, so I did look to enter an industry that I always had passion for as a consumer, but hadn't really thought about as a career. So with coaxing from close friends, I did make that leap. I started my career as an assistant because I didn't have relevant experience in the fashion or beauty world. I really saturated New York City with my resume, any fashion or beauty company that was hiring. And starting off as an assistant was also humbling. You're at the bottom. I was a sponge. I was learning everything I could. I supported two people. In all honesty, the only reason I got the job was my resume was so limited. I still had my high school on my resume. And I went to high school in the city, and one of the people I supported went to a rival high school, so that's why he hired me. But it just shows you never know what's going to get your foot in the door. You got to take every opportunity.
And I'm sorry, how many years of experience did you have while you were in publishing?
Like 3.5 years. So it wasn't. It was definitely a bit of investment time-wise. So I was at St. Martin's Press for about 2.5 years, and then I went and I was in a college division. So when I first made the decision to leave, I thought it might be that I was in a college division and not the sexy world of trade. And I went over to Hearst Book Group into a trade role, and that's where I knew right away it was actually publishing. So, you have to have these experiences. That's how you grow. That's how your career grows. So I was hired at the Monet Group, which is a small fashion jewelry company. It still exists in a small way in, JCPenney, Macy's, some, bigger retailers out there. But it was small. It was privately owned. It had just come out of bankruptcy. So there was a bit of a wind in the company because they had just received more funding. And being at a small company, I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of functions. So within a year, I was promoted into visual, and I was running the showroom. So we had accounts come in 4 to 5 times a year at market times, and I was responsible for setting up the showroom, or really organizing the contractors that set up the showroom, but also communicating with the accounts on how products should be merchandised on the counters. It was through that, because I started building merchandising maps, that the head of planning, one day I was in a meeting and she said, "Who wrote this merchandising map?" And she was very scary and gruff. And I meekly raised my hand and she said, "I need to talk to you after this meeting." So terrified, I walked in her office and she said, "You think like a planner. I want you on my team." So, small company, this is how things can happen. And that's where actually I had my first role where I knew I found the right seat. I was given a team to lead, which I was so excited about. And I was in planning, which all of a sudden it really made sense with the way I thought. Though I was an English major, I was always good at math. And I always liked the problem solving of math. So it was a really amazing experience. I was in new business, so we were trying to break into a few new accounts, and we were also trying to grow internationally at the time. I did recognize, though, for me, career-wise or education-wise, my background was really liberal arts, and I didn't have the business fundamentals that I wanted. So I didn't know how to read a balance sheet. I didn't know how to write a marketing plan. So I made the decision to actually go to business school part-time while working. I knew that I was in the right industry, but I really wanted more of that education. So I started going to business school at NYU. at night, 2 nights a week, which is daunting.
Yeah.
You have to leave work at 5, 2 days a week to get to class. And as you guys all know, because you're students, it's a lot. You're juggling a lot as a student. So I took the long approach. I was like, I'm going to do it slow and steady. I just wanted the degree. So it did take me 4 years. While in business school, I did have my first child. So my 3rd year of business school, I was pregnant, had a baby, my 4th year of business school. And funny story, my first daughter was born at the end of May. I was very pregnant and I couldn't fit in the desk to do my exam. So I had to take a finance exam standing up, very pregnant. I know. I remind her of when she's being ready. But while I was at Monet,
so that was nice of her.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
I was in the same position as you last year with my second, and I was praying I could finish the semester out. I'm like,
right.
Let me get through May.
Exactly. And she did. She was a Memorial Day baby, so she let me finish. But while I was at Monet and just starting business school, Victoria's Secret Beauty was relocating the beauty division from Columbus, Ohio, really with the goal of making beauty its own quasi-standalone business to rival Estee Lauder or L'Oreal. They hired one of the icons from Estee Lauder, her name's Robin Burns, to be CEO. And the first function they were staffing was planning. So So anyone who had planning in their title was getting calls. It was very exciting, and I was really excited to get the call and then meeting the team. And I did make the decision to move over. And it was so much fun. It was like being part of a startup, but you had the backing of a huge corporation. So at that point, it was still called Limited Brands, based in Columbus. But we were really given the charter to grow this beauty brand, and it was amazing. It was about a couple $100 million when I joined. When I left, it was close to $1 billion. So it was so much fun to be part of that team. Robin was an amazing leader, true visionary, but also an amazing people leader. She brought such grace and dignity to her role, and she was always really clear about what our brand should and shouldn't be. And that taught me a lot in terms of when you're building a brand, how you think of filters, and that then can extend to the products you launch, the promotions you run. But we were all always marching in the same direction. I started there as a planner, and I was there for 5 years, and I, moved up the tree. I was promoted to allocation manager, then planning manager, and then my last role at Victoria's Secret Beauty, I was leading the planning department.
Wow.
While there, and I was really happy, which I think is really also important. Like I was, the business was doing really well. I was leading the team, but I got a call from a former boss from Victoria's Secret Beauty, actually, who had moved over to Ann Taylor. And he was really, really constantly trying to convince me to join him at Ann Taylor. And, you're all going to be faced with these moments in your career where you have to think about where you want your career to go and what you can learn from each experience. And for me, what ultimately made me decide to leave Victoria's Secret Beauty and join Ann Taylor were 2 things. One, it was the opportunity to lead a bigger team. So the position I was being offered was Vice President of Merchandise Planning. The team was about twice the size of the team I was leading, and it was many more categories. And then 2, beauty as a business is pretty much replenishment based. There are launches with new colors, new ideas, but 75 to 80% of a beauty business is a replenishment business. With moving to Ann Taylor, I knew I'd have the opportunity to learn a fashion assortment business where new product was constantly being designed and set and marked down and then being replaced by new product. And I hadn't had that experience. So I went with my eyes open. I had a pro-con list and I did join Ann Taylor. And I joined actually pregnant with my second daughter because life continues as your career continues. And, it was really interesting. The business was very challenged when I joined. Ann Taylor as a brand does reinvent itself quite a bit, but it was going through another reinvention. And, I was joining a business where the team was pretty disengaged. Business had been tough. People weren't, it was yet another reinvention. So it was, as a leader, really, the opportunity was, how do you engage and motivate a team? How do you also grow and change the trajectory of a business? So while I was there, proud to say we, at that moment, were able to turn the business around. I had the opportunity to work with amazing leaders at Anne. The initial vision when I joined actually ended up not working. So a new leadership team was brought in.
Wow.
And we were able together to really change and bring Ann Taylor back to its roots. I also was able to build a really high performance team, which was really exciting, like really getting to the core, why weren't people engaged, and really trying to address what some of those concerns and issues were and give the team a reason to be. I was then promoted to senior vice president and had responsibility for store planning and allocation. And then through my time at Anne, I was asked to pinch hit a little bit at the Loft brand. And similarly, as what I had experienced, Ann Taylor had a lot of turnover at the executive level. So there were a lot of changes, from that CEO president level was changing quite a bit. You learn a lot as a leader through that. You learn how to be flexible and agile, but also how you show up for your team as authentic, being able to explain changes, but also times when you didn't really understand changes, to be honest about that as well. But really important to get the team all in the same place that we can move forward with any decisions that were being made. So I grew a lot at Ann Taylor personally as a leader.
Well, I was actually at Ann Taylor in 2006 and 7 while you were there.
That's so funny.
But I don't think our paths crossed at all. I was at Direct.
So. Oh, that's so funny. So you know what I mean. So there was.
Yeah.
So while I was there, so while I was there, similarly, I was happy, but I got the call from Coach. So I was like, oh, I might as well just meet people at Coach.
That's
Coach,
you're happy. Get an
exactly. It is the best time. And Coach, in a lot of ways, is it was the bellwether of the industry. So, but I wasn't really expecting to move. But then I started meeting people, and I completely fell in love. I met my boss, the woman who became my boss and is still a dear friend, who I spoke to all of you guys. But that was my first
actually, so not these students.
Yeah, okay, got it. Okay. So I met a Coach. Their interview process, you literally do meet anywhere from 10 to 15 people, which is daunting, but what was good about it was I was really getting a sense of the brand and the company, and the themes I was hearing were 100% consistent. That was, there was such a love for the brand. There was such a belief in the promise of how big the business could be. So I was excited to join. So I joined in 2009 in North America, leading planning and allocation for all channels of distribution: outlet, full price, e-commerce, and stores. And then the business was tremendous. I remember I joined in November. I remember my first Black Friday weekend, I couldn't believe the numbers that were coming across on my phone. I kept being like, this can't be right. Because it was just, the business was on fire. So it was really amazing to be part of that. About a year and a half after that, I was then promoted to SVP, and I was given merchandising for North America. Again, this was another chance to stretch myself, really getting both sides of the planning and allocation and the merchandising side. Also was given store operations. So, really was expanding the teams I was leading and how I was leading these teams together. In 2014, I was then asked to join the global team. So as you guys know, Coach is a global brand with really big businesses in Japan and China. At that time, it was just relaunching in Europe, but that business is doing quite well. Businesses in Singapore, Malaysia. Right now, also there's New Zealand, Australia. These are all the directly owned businesses. Not to mention, there are about 40 countries worldwide where we have wholesale distributors. So it's such a big business. And my charge moving into a global role was, how do you make the assortment more centralized how do we make the promise to the customer, because the customer is global, much more understandable, so that when he or she is getting on a plane and going from country to country, the brand experience is not so different. So I led global planning, global inventory, inventory being the biggest asset on our books. And then also I built the global pricing team. So a lot of luxury brands, Coach included, price at a premium internationally. So I was charged to kind of build this team and make it not just a math exercise, but really take into account consumer thresholds, local consumer thresholds, and how that would then translate to the assortments we were offering. It was amazing. It was a wonderful experience. And then just last year, actually, well, before that, in 2017, Coach acquired Kate Spade. Coach had acquired Stuart Weitzman in 2015, and then Kate Spade was the third brand to join the portfolio. I was part of the due diligence team as Kate Spade was being assessed as, you know, is this a viable business? Should we buy it? So I started to work a little bit with the Kate Spade team, and, you know, Kate Spade's an amazing brand, as we all know. The team is passionate and joyful and truly, I'd say, emblematic of the brand as well. So I really got to make great connections there. And then this past summer, and this truly was a surprise, CEO called me into his office and he told me I was now president of North America. So at Kate Spade. So since August of this year, I've been president of North America, Kate Spade, which has been truly amazing. It was something I really wanted. I wanted the opportunity to lead both a corporate and a field team. It also, having had the global experience, it grew me so much as a leader for North America because our customer is global, and to really bring a lot of that knowledge into new North America channels of distribution was exciting for me. And it was also exciting for me personally to be part of Kate Spade. I remember when Kate Spade, the brand, launched in the 90s. I saved up for that nylon bag. And, you know, I now have two teenage daughters, one college age actually, who've been Kate Spade consumers. And we're so happy when Coach acquired Kate Spade and the discount applied to them. But what's been most amazing is the ability to lead this amazing team. So I do have a corporate team that handles buying, planning, allocation, store operations. And then I have field teams that handled stores across outlet and specialty stores. The corporate teams, we buy omni, so we also do handle the e-commerce business for both channels. And then I have a separate wholesale team that deals with all of the accounts, so the Bloomingdale's, the Nordstroms, the Macy's of the world. And, you know, that business also is a very different model, but the footprint of North America, I'm proud to say I get to lead. So that is my career path.
Amazing. A big, amazing job that you have now. But what I love about hearing you talk about your career path is how much you've got out of every step. And, you know, most people I have in here, I feel like they've got that one job where they just knew it was wrong and, you know, they messed up. But you really own every decision that you've made, which I think is awesome, including the publishing starting, which is cool. And there are not very many people who have both, you know, have beauty and, you know, and women's and, I'm sorry, you started off in accessories as well.
Yeah, exactly.
We're at Monet. So yeah, you kind of have three different really big groups, which is really impressive to,
thank you.
to have hopped around that many times, which I'm sure we can ask you a million questions about. My first question though is, why are you passionate about what you do?
There's a couple of reasons. So first and foremost, what makes me most passionate is leading a team. I take so much pride in developing and growing the next generation of leaders. And, you know, what's so exciting is to see the legacy of talent that I've been able to develop who are really successful leaders in their own right. But for me, every day, getting the opportunity to teach, to grow, and also learn from the team is what gets me out of bed. And then secondly, I love our business. You know, I love the product. Our industry is really exciting. You know, we're dealing with COVID right now, but if we look at that over here for a minute and we think about our industry, I love that we create products that make people happy, that people need to have. They don't need to have, but they want so much that they need, and that is exciting to me. So, being able to marry the two every day is what makes me really passionate.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything, given that you were an English major,
Yep.
maybe you feel like there's a lot of things, but is there anything in college specifically that you really wish you'd studied that would have prepared you?
Definitely. And it's funny because, like I said, I have my older daughter, the one who I was pregnant with in business school, just started her freshman year of college. And I kept trying to push her because I wish I had taken a microeconomics class in college. So, I'm like, I don't think I would have been an econ major, but I wish I had had that basis. Especially going into business school, I felt like I had a lot of catch up to do in terms of just those fundamentals. And microeconomics is one of those classes that it's supply and demand. So it teaches you kind of those basics, so to speak, but it frames it up in a lot of ways in a historical view. So you understand the history of commerce. So that's something I do wish I had taken if I was in college.
Yeah, that's a good call out. How did you, we know the answer to this from your description, actually. Can you tell us a little bit more about the way that Kate Spade and Tapestry are set up? So,
Sure.
you gave a little bit from your perspective, but I don't know.
Absolutely. No, but absolutely. So the way to think about it is Tapestry is really the holding company of the three brands. So there's Coach, Stuart Weitzman, Kate Spade. We all operate as independent brands, meaning that all of the creative decisions from product, marketing, anything consumer facing is owned by the brand. Tapestry, the holding company, provides amazing support in all of, so to speak, the back end support. So IT, finance, HR, construction. So anywhere supply chain where we can get synergies from being a group of brands instead of individual brands is run through Tapestry. And then anything consumer facing is owned by the brand.
Got it. That's great. What do you feel like? Actually, I kind of will call out the elephant in the room because that's not where my question originally was. Yep. But how is your online business surviving with COVID, and what's kind of stewing with you guys as far as?
It's a great question. So we did close our stores, like all retailers. Most retailers. We closed on March 18th. But we did keep our online business open. So our online business is doing quite well. We have seen the customer shift, and we do think, we're being really sensitive to what is a really specific, unique consumer mindset right now. What we're seeing and what the customer is telling us is it's bringing her joy to be able to shop and see product.
Yeah.
And I think, in a lot of ways, because we have these conversations as well, as we're not essential, but in some ways we are, because we're a distraction.
Yeah.
And I think the news for all of us is so heavy right now that it makes us happy that she's getting really excited when she's like, you know what, this is making me happy just looking at this in my room or knowing it's coming. So, but we are seeing that shift happen. We always had a really strong online business. So it's really just continued.
Good. Yeah. And you have a great format that you're set up to keep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is good.
It is good.
Outside of that, what do you feel like as some of the challenges of the business right now?
I think it's the unknown. I think it's the uncertainty. Coach, the China business is much bigger than it is for Kate Spade because Kate just recently acquired the business back in China. But we had some bit of a harbinger because we did see what happened in China in January.
Yeah.
I just think in a lot of ways there was such disbelief that it would move west. Or, there wasn't that understanding. So I think now the challenges are what we're all living with in our personal lives as well, which is how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
And, what will be the longstanding repercussions to the global economy of the virus?
Yeah.
And what will that do to the consumer psyche? So that is, that's really the question we're asking every day. which is, there's not a clear date that you can point to and say, okay, this is when it will be over. And then there are a lot of models out there, in terms of what is the consumer reaction after an event like this. But, we haven't seen anything in our lifetimes of this scale.
Yeah.
So obviously you're hearing a lot of comparisons to the Spanish flu. That was 100 years ago. So I think that's a lot of what we're talking about. And that in itself is a challenge, being able to make the right decisions for what post-COVID will look like, but also how do we protect the business through what is a potential indefinite time horizon.
And this is a naive question, but has on the coach side of things, have these come out of anything over in China yet?
The business is starting to come back. The stores are opening, and the traffic is, it's not where it was.
Yeah.
But it is, with stores reopening, we are seeing customers engage again. So, that is promising. But I think it's like everything. It's where I think everyone is, and we're all seeing the news. It's when can you really stop social distancing? When can
right?
So,
and what are the like you said, the long-term effects psychologically? I mean, how OCD are people feel leaving the house when this is all over?
Right. And you think about, as a retailer, some of the moments we love are when the stores are really crowded, and it just, it's to get your mind around that again. As customers, as people, is I think going to take a while.
Yeah, definitely. One of the themes of my class this year, both in fall and spring semester, has been around sustainability, which I think obviously is a very hot part of the industry right now. But wondering if there's anything that Kate Spade or Tapestry is doing in particular to be more sustainable.
So sustainability is it's a hot button for us as well. So we reuse a lot of fabric, even leathers. There is a way to have a reusability with leathers, definitely with hardware. So that is, especially our creative director at Kate Spade, she is, this is a big focus of hers, which is how can we reuse and recreate and reimagine with existing materials without that need to consume that raw material base. So that's a big piece of what we do. Across the brands, we have no fur. So that was a big decision as brands, which I'm proud that we made that decision.
How long did you?
The decision was made last year. It wasn't as big a part of the Kate Spade brand as it was for a Coach to move away from fur, but because fur linings and things like that were part, and in a small way, but it was still part of the product. But now that is no longer part of our products. And then I'd say the other conversations we're having is, and we haven't done anything yet, but they're live conversations, is what does a rental market look like? How we are seeing that our customers are thinking about reusing and renting, and this is pre-COVID. But what does that mean to our model? So these are conversations that we're having.
And you are, as a wholesaler, you already sell to Rent the Runway.
We do sell to Rent the Runway. We're a pretty big customer of Rent the Runway. Yeah.
And has that been a good model for you? I mean, it's got to be.
It has. And they're amazing partners, and it's really interesting because there's definitely a Kate Spade girl that loves on Rent the Runway. It's interesting to see what she gravitates towards, but absolutely, so we are learning a lot from them, and how they built their model, but also just what the consumer mindset is as it relates to renting.
Awesome. So it's kind of interesting because you can tell I made some of these questions up prior to 3 weeks ago, but
exactly.
How important is your digital presence? But I mean, I think right now we all know how important your digital presence is.
But I think digital presence also is it's broad because I think there is the commercial aspect of it, but there is also your presence on social media. What's your presence as a brand in the digital world is a very important piece of how we know we will continue to grow the brand. Also, it's where the customer is. So I'd say it's one of the most important aspects of what we talk about.
And in one of my other classes that I teach, which is about, the running of stores and
Right.
and that sort of thing, and the importance of having that omni-channel business that goes
100%. Yep.
both. And the thought process that brick and mortar is struggling and probably will continue to struggle for a while.
Right.
But the question really is, how much is COVID gonna really put that under the magnifying glass?
No, completely. It is the big question. It is. And I think, how the customer's omni, we as customers are all omni. So how we can merge the two experiences together is, it's a constant topic that we think about, even because there are customers who still like to be in stores, who have relationships with store associates. What's been actually really amazing to us is how many of our customers have reached out directly to our store associates.
That's
just
great.
to say, I miss you. How are you? I want to talk with you. And, so how do we also help this customer navigate online together? These are some of the things we're thinking about, because that's where the customer is, pre-COVID and then now during COVID.
Definitely. Yeah, that's wonderful. You've worked at some amazing places, from Victoria's Secret to which is owned by Limited Brands, to Ann Taylor and now Tapestry. Where has been your favorite place to work, and why?
Oh, that's a great question. I have really loved every place I've worked. I guess if I was to say, I think that early years of Victoria's Secret beauty will always stand out as the most special. And I, harkened on this a little bit, but there was something so magical about building a brand and, and really watching it, all the ingredients that we were putting in a mixing bowl come together to this beautiful, dessert. So I always will look back on that time really fondly. And like as I said before, Robin was a really amazing leader. She was really clear about where she saw us, how she saw us growing the business, and we had that filter. And it always stuck with me as a leader as well, how important it is to be clear with your expectations and to know just as much as you know who you are, but to know who you're not. So you stay on course. And then the other piece I learned from her, she was really human. I worked at Victoria's Secret during 9/11, and I remember just her humanity through that whole experience, to all of us, always stayed with me as well. So I think that ability that, whatever your job is, we're people, and treating people with respect is the most important thing you can do as a leader. And so I will always, that will always be kind of one of the brightest spots, I think, of my career.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing, but do you have a least favorite place that you were?
Sure, 100%, because I think it's just as important by far when I went to the Hearst Book Group. So, it's funny because I think everyone, you hope everyone has a amazing career and doesn't have a low spot, but the low spots are important because you learn from them.
Totally.
And I knew by day 2 that I'd made a mistake. So, when I was at St. Martin's Press, though I wasn't inspired to be anyone, I really liked everyone I worked with. I had a great group of friends. Coincidentally, one of my best friends there became my husband. So it was a really amazing experience. And we're all still friends, which is kind of nice. Like we still will meet, have reunions. But, day 1 or 2, when I moved from St. Martin's, I really didn't connect with the people. And then I really didn't connect with the job. And I knew right away. So, and that's a lonely, tough feeling.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, all right, I can't just leave right away. So I stuck it out. I think I stuck it out about 8 months, but it was tough. It was tough.
And
a lot of
one of Fran's pieces of advice that she gave the students last year is, when you know it's wrong, just cut bait and get out as fast as you can. Because
and it's funny because I think I was like, that's my advice now as well. At that time I'm like, no, I need to make it a year. I don't know why I put this arbitrary timeline on it, but I was so unhappy, and all my friends were like, just go. Like it doesn't, and I wish I'd done it sooner.
Yeah.
It's so true. It is such an important lesson. It's like, and in your heart of hearts, like you're like, I don't feel like I'm my best self here.
You can't thrive.
You can't thrive. You need to thrive. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Have you had any really interesting travel in your career so far? Any favorite
I
locations?
have. When I was in the global role at Coach, you know, Asia was a huge market. Europe was, we had just relaunched in Europe, but it was growing and it was growing at a really rapid pace. So I was lucky enough that I was in Asia and Europe at least 2 to 3 times a year. So, what was exciting, Tokyo is one of my favorite cities. I was always excited. We usually would go to China, then Japan. But Tokyo is one of the most magical, amazing places on earth. But also we visited a lot of cities in China. So, obviously Shanghai, Beijing, but those tier two cities are also really fascinating. And, they're tier two cities, but they're 8, 10 million people. So, you know,
Pretty big deal.
and it's a really big deal. And just seeing even Shanghai, the first time I went there, which was probably 6 years ago or so, to now, I was there this past summer, just how much it's changed, like how rapidly these cities are growing and evolving. So pretty amazing. And then, our office, the Coach office, is in London for Europe. So it was exciting to go to London a lot as well. London has a heartbeat that's similar to New York in terms of energy. So
Yeah.
always nice to visit.
Yes, that's great. Did you ever have a time in your career that you feel like you made a huge mistake, and that this could be the same thing as stepping into Hearst? But you'll be
I think I made a lot of mistakes. So I think as people do, there wasn't like one monumental mistake, but what I will say about the role of mistakes is they're important. And I think the most important part of mistakes, it's how you recover from them and how you learn from them. So we should never be scared of making mistakes. What the problem is if you make the same mistake more than once and you don't learn from it. So, I think of things, and I think of, early in my career back in Victoria's Secret, the Limited was such a machine in terms of running a business. And I'd come from a small fashion jewelry company. I was in my second year of business school. I remember I made one, like, a pretty big math mistake. And I remember the CFO was so kind, and I was on the phone and I was on speaker and I was clearly saying a number now that I cringe thinking about. And she said, "Do you want to look at this one more time? Why don't we get off the phone and you look at this one more time?" And my heart just sunk. And then I looked at it and it was like the inverse of what I should have been saying.
Yeah.
I never made that mistake again. So I think so much of it is like we all have those moments, but we have to be able to learn from it, recover it, not beat yourself up over it, but be able to learn so you're not doing it again. I think,
Yeah.
And this is what I coach team members again. I'm like, if you're making the same mistake repeatedly that you're getting feedback on, that's the mistake. That's the problem.
That's the big issue. Yeah. And being defensive about getting the critique too.
Exactly. I mean, we are all people. And I really do firmly believe you learn your best lessons when you fumble.
Yeah. That's a great call out. Conversely, do you have something that you feel most proud of that you've worked on in your career so far?
I definitely have been proud to lead the team at Kate. And I think even especially we had a really, I entered the business in August. It was really tough. We had a pretty big turnaround in our holiday season, relative to really how the first quarter had performed. So that was it was really fun. It was nonstop, but we had an amazing Black Friday and and all of our systems crashed. So we were at times flying blind, but we were going by our gut instinct and how we worked as a team. So being able to bring all those teams together was truly amazing. And then I would say at Coach, I was really proud to be part of rethinking the role of the global team and the local teams and how they work together. So I, in partnership with the head merchant, really rethought what the structure is and how the teams interacted with each other and how we built assortments together. And that model that we rolled out is still in effect. So that was also, very exciting and a lot of hard work, but it was great to be part of that.
Well, and obviously, that you were recognized for it. That's how you got promoted, which is speaks volumes. So that's awesome. Who's the most interesting person you've met in your career so far?
Wow. I've met a lot of interesting people. I think one of the most interesting is Lou Frankfurt, who was the CEO of Coach when I joined. He's an icon. He built Coach from literally, a 100 million to a $5 billion company. Like, just unbelievable, his track record. But he is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. He's the whole package. He knows so much about business, so much about the customer, so much about brand, but then he's read every book that's in a bookstore. He's seen every movie. It's just, there's nothing he can't talk about. And he's, truly an American success story. He grew up son of a cop and a housewife in the Bronx, and, really is a self-made man. So I could never tire talking to him and hearing his stories. And so, yeah, I think he's one of the most interesting.
That's great. My last question before I'll turn it over to the students would be, what advice do you have for students to make themselves more hireable?
I would say when you think about how you present yourself to employees or employers, really think about what you've achieved and your specific impact on it. So I think, the tendency is to kind of just do a laundry list of I've done all these things, or here are the classes I've taken, but really step back and be like, wait, what did I get out of this and what did I put into it that makes me unique? So you want to be able to, for lack of a better word, quantify your experience and your impact to your education or any jobs that you've had, because you've all had them, but that's what's going to set you apart. And when you have, especially when you're on an interview, that is really what matters and what people are going to want to hear.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, students, if I can turn it over to you, please raise your hands and we'll call on you. It would be great if you could put your camera on as well, just to make it interesting. All right, the first hand I see is Sun. Meg.
Hi, Sun.
Yeah, it's me.
Hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, and the first question is, do different countries and city have different market strategy?
So it's a really good question. So when we think of brands like Coach, Kate Spade, and even Stuart Weitzman, there is an overall brand strategy that we communicate globally. But that said, when we get into specific countries, there are local influencers where we will grow a specific marketing campaign around that is really relevant to the country or the geography that they're in. So I'll give you an example right now. At Kate Spade, we have a partnership with Naomi Watanabe, who's a comedian. She's one of the most followed in Japan. So it's a really big campaign in Japan. We have it in a small way here in the US, but it's huge in Japan, and that's where we launched it. And the goal of that campaign really was for that Japanese consumer. So, I'd say the answer is a little of both, but we want to make sure any local campaign fits in to the overall global message of the brand.
Okay, thank you. And second question is, if I want to own my own company and design brand, and also think about the operation and the management, can you give me some advice?
So I would say, think first as the leader, think about what you're really good at, and also be really honest about what you're not that good at, and make sure you're hiring people who can complement you. So you want to surround yourself with leaders and partners who can challenge you and can also think about things that you wouldn't naturally think about. We're all good at certain things and we lean into that. The important thing is to also recognize as a leader what might not be your strength. For example, I'm never going to be a great IT person. So I rely heavily on my IT partners to help guide in those decisions. But that's a really important piece as you think about, if you're thinking about building your own brand and own company, there's so many functions that you need in order to be successful. So you want to surround yourself with the best who can help you get there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Austin Morrow, I have you next.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So my question, you kind of already talked about what challenges you faced getting up in the or growing in the industry, but I was sort of wondering, as a woman, did you see any sexism when you were moving up? How did you kind of deal with that situation?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, it's I think for all of us, we are who we are, so you're aware of that. So I've always been aware of being a woman and also being a woman leader. And, you know, on the positive side, being a role model for women leaders as well. You know, I'll be honest, I felt the most sexism when I was in business school. You know,
Really?
at the time when I went to Stern, it was about the part-time program was probably 70-30 men, women. And it was very much, it was geared to, for the most part, finance. So I, for the better part of my time there, went to Victoria's Secret, and the assumption was always that I wasn't smart once they heard where I worked. So I was always felt like I was overcoming that. I'll actually tell you guys a quick, very funny story, because I think like everything, you have to use these things to your advantage. I was in a management course, and we had just gone around the room and said where we all worked, and I said Victoria's Secret, and I had the same reaction that I received often. And the teacher said, okay, the next class we're going to play poker, and whoever wins doesn't need to take the midterm. So I did know how to play poker, but I pretended like I didn't. So it was a class of about 100 students. So it was you know, one of those, like, you'd play somebody and then the person who won would play the next person. So I kept being like, wait, how do you play? I work for Victoria's Secret. What? Like, how do you play? And long story short, I won. And I didn't have to take the midterm, but the professor at one point, like, it was like towards the end, he's like, I totally know what you're doing and keep doing it. And he's like, because this is really the lesson, is everyone had this whole unconscious bias about you and you're playing into it perfectly and you're probably going to win. I'm like, I'm definitely winning. I'm competitive. I'm like, there's no way I'm not winning. But it was a really good lesson also for a leadership perspective, because it was shocking to everybody that I won, and their whole impression of me then changed. But to answer your question, I was aware of that. And I was aware of, okay, how do I have to think about this in terms of how I present myself? So yes. But in the working world, you know, yes, from time to time, but in this industry, you know, you're surrounded by, I think, a good mix of men and women at all levels. So for me, it was the most pronounced in business school.
That was definitely what I was most curious about, is with this specific industry, how that played into it. So
yeah,
thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, if I can chime in on that too, it was not, this specific industry is a very female dominated industry, and I didn't personally have a male boss until I was, I don't know, let me think. Yeah, 12 years into my career probably, which is kind of unique, I think, from a lot of people out there.
Totally. Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't mean there wasn't still sexism amongst women, and that still exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I would say, as far as most industries go, it's probably on the lower scale, but at the same time, it's out there for sure.
Yeah.
I was recently in a networking meeting, and it was hosted by a very high-powered woman who actually is running the North American branch of a bank, a large bank.
Wow.
And so she's a high-powered woman. She's running this meeting. She paid for the catering, and you know, it's just a networking meeting, so it wasn't exactly you know, business related. And one of the older gentlemen raised his hand and said to her, you know, my brother just asked me if the pretty blonde lady was still was still working here or whatever. And she kind of giggled and laughed it up. I thought, how bizarre would that be reversed? If
So
someone
bizarre.
that hot man still working, it just wouldn't happen at all.
Yeah.
And the fact that she just kind of brushed it off as not a big deal just shows how often that's probably happened to her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Her career. So, and
That's
it's out there, and it's how you react to it. I think that.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yep.
So the next person I have is Yoonjin Chow.
Hi.
Hi, Ms. Kirszner.
Hi.
So I guess my question is, what are some things that what are some favorite things about Kate Spade for you, or are there things you wish more people knew about Kate Spade?
I love that question. So some favorite things for me about Kate Spade is it truly is a brand that is rooted in optimism and self-expression and individuality and female community. And something that I wish more people knew is that energy really translates into the office. So it's, there are men and women who are part of the team, but there's this sense of hope and joy that we definitely look to bring to the products, but also that it permeates how we work together, which I think is rare. And it makes coming to work fun, but it also, especially in a world like now, I think we all need a little hope and optimism. And we need to be able to really celebrate individuality and self-expression. So I feel like as a brand, we're really poised to continue to be meaningful now, but also in the future.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next question I have is from Anne Galstian.
Hi, Anne.
Hi. Sorry. So my question is, I'm a fashion design student, and I was
Great.
wondering what kind of like day-to-day, interactions and do you have with your designers, and like what kind of parts do you contribute to like the design process, and like just in general how that works?
No, that's a great question. So, I think one of the fun parts, or one of the pieces that I also really love about this world is I think of fashion as art. And, the products that we make are just, there's something so beautiful about the whole creative process. I'm the number side, I'm the commercial side. And I love that we live in this ecosystem where we both interact and support each other. So, and that's very much how it works at a company like Coach and a Kate Spade, where the design process is, it's designers have the freedom to create and get inspired and build product, update on update on trends, but also, from a design standpoint, there's so many different places to get inspiration. There are set touch points where the commercial business units weigh in and bring in, here are the needs of the customer, here's what she's looking for, here are silhouettes that really worked or didn't work right now, or here's, voids that we're seeing in the assortment that we want filled. They are predetermined touch points for us to interact, because the important part is you don't want the commercial to stifle the creative process, but you don't want the creative process to be completely devoid of commercial needs. So there has to be those points that we interact. So to that point, I do interact with my design partners quite a bit. And then our creative director, Nicola, she does, when our schedules work, we do walk the store together. We try to do it once a month. So, we'll set a new floor set, and then we'll walk the floor together and we'll talk about how stuff's doing. And, that's fact. It's like the customer's reacting to this, not this. That's helpful for her to see how the customer's responding to product. And then, for us to just have a really good conversation. And I like to do it in the store because that's real. You want to see it on the shelves, and it's kind of good to see what customers milling about. So I'd say those are, but there are definite also a lot of conference room meetings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rituja Sharma.
Hi.
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 So my question is, if like I am also in fashion design major, so if we have to learn something about merchandising as a designer, which we really don't learn in our schools. Like merchandising is another major and fashion designing is another major.
Right.
But you have some like advice for fashion designers that we should focus on?
It's a good question. I would say I think it's good to understand the broad strokes of what merchandising is, but I don't think you need to be an expert in it.
Right.
I think that you want to have strong merchant partners that you'll surround yourself with, who will help you, who will make sure you're checking the right boxes in terms of assortment building. It's kind of what I said even before. I wish I'd taken microeconomics because it just would have been a good framework for me, but I would never have been an econ major. So I think the same for you, like good to just understand, because also for you to be able to have the most productive relationship with your merchant, to know what the merchant's looking for, but
Yeah.
you don't need to be the expert on it. Does that help?
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
And
Of course.
it's actually something that has come up before in previous classes for me. And I actually do have a little bit of a quick retail math cheat sheet for you guys that I intend to go over as the semester goes on,
Yep.
in which you kind of get a feel for, as a designer, you don't need to know the ins and outs and all
Right.
that. But you do need to be able to look at a sales report and say, okay, I understand this is my best item and this is why.
100%. Yeah.
And it's going to make it a lot easier for you to interact with your merchant if you have that background.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why like I have my minor as retail and marketing, but just wanted to be like curious. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Good
I
question.
agree with you. It's like it's good for you to know what the metrics are. So also it'll help you have, for both of you, to be able to challenge each other.
Right.
But
Right.
I do think there is something sacred about the design process as well, that you don't want to be so loaded
Focus on-
down. Yeah, exactly. You have to be able to create.
Looking forward, let them do all the looking backward.
Exactly.
Mia Mahmad.
Hi, Mia.
Hi. Sorry, my camera is not working, but
No.
my question is, being the leader of so many teams, what is it like coordinating with a large number of employees?
It's a really good question. I'm pretty high touch, so I like to bring the teams together as often as I can, because I think especially for certain big messages, it's important for everybody to hear things the same way. We're lucky that we live in a world with technology. So even before COVID,
right
Zoom, yeah, exactly. But Zoom was a big part of our life before, especially, when you have stores across the country, going all the way to Hawaii, how we get together. But I do also have really great leaders of each of the teams who report into me, and I spend a lot of time with them. So though I like to touch everybody, I also am able to delegate a lot of the messaging to my teams to make sure that we are all connected. But then also I do a lot of skip level activities. So in the corporate office, I will host skip level lunches every few weeks with different levels. So I'll have, a manager level lunch, and it'll be the managers across all the teams I lead. And it's a nice way to also have that team build a network within themselves. Or I'll have a director lunch or an allocator analyst lunch. And then at the stores piece, obviously not now, but I get out to stores, at least 10 days a month, and we'll blitz the market. So, it's like Minneapolis, Chicago, Ohio, all one trip, and see as many stores as we can. And there's something about being in the store and, shaking hands with this. I know you can't even say this now in a world of social distancing, but just being out there and being able to connect personally is so important. But recently it's been a lot of Zoom calls. So
Yeah. Amy Coe.
Hi,
Hi, I just wanted to ask, what does a typical workday look like for you?
So I would say no day is ever the same, which I like, but I'm an early riser. So I wake up early. I also like to work out in the morning because I like it to be over. So my sacred time's like 5:36, drinking coffee by myself in the living room, kind of going over. I have access to yesterday's numbers that I'm able to kind of just see how the day landed, ground myself. I'll go running or do yoga or something, and then I'm usually in the office by like 8:39, and then it really depends. I mean, there are some days I'm literally in meetings the whole day. And it depends time of year. Like if we're in a market week and we're in brand presentations, you're seeing product all day. But then there are other days where I'll have all individual touch bases. So it really does depend where we are on the product life cycle and then the business cycle. I'd say the days that are the most consistent are Mondays. Are always you're always recapping the week that was. You're reconfirming the strategies you're about to embark on for the week that's about to begin. So Mondays are probably the most you know what to expect because you have standing meetings where you're reviewing the business and making quick decisions. But part of what I like, and I say this when I interview people who are just breaking into our industry, I'm like, you have to like unpredictability to work in this world because the days are never 100%. Like you can do a to-do list and then that gets thrown out the window.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jada Moore.
Hi.
Hi.
You seem to have like a really big job, and that seems like it has like a lot of responsibilities, and in your you've had a lot of responsibilities as well. And you have a family and all that. So how would you say you deal with the pressure of all the different responsibilities that you have?
That's a really good question. I have a husband who holds the mirror up to me quite a bit and keeps me honest. And I one of the things I think I learned the most in business school was because I was going to school and working at the same time, I learned how to prioritize. So I've taken that lesson into my professional life, but also into my personal life. You can't do everything and you can't sweat the small stuff. So I really focus on the things that matter, and I've really learned how to let things go that don't. Sometimes I make the wrong decision about what matters, but you get to a point where you can't do everything. And I learned that. I'm like, I couldn't do all the reading in business school. I couldn't do every single of the 20 tasks on my to-do list in a given day at work. But I learned to really focus on the things that would move the needle. And that is what I've definitely taken into both parts of my life. It's always been important for me to have dinner with my kids. So I'll come home and I'll have dinner with my kids and I'll put my phone in a separate room and then I'll get back on at like 9. So I set times for myself where I'm like, nope, my focus right now is going to be my family. It's funny as you have kids, when they're little, they need you in a certain way, but actually as they get older, they need you more. Especially I have 2 daughters, they will wait for me to come home from work and I'd get the full download of both of their days. And that time was really sacred. It was sacred to them. It was sacred to me. So no matter what time it was, I knew I was going to be, they share a room, that I'd be in their room and I'd get the full, like they both had me and I'd hear everything and I'd be able to download with them. And it's been nice as my older one's gone to college. We still have that connection. She's like, I just want to tell you what happened today. And like now a lot of it's over text, but having that connection to them has always been super important. So I'd say the big advice is you learn what matters and that's what you focus on and you let the other stuff go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Xin Yu Zhao.
Hi.
Still there? I don't know if we lost her. Katrina. There we go.
Hi, Katrina.
Hey, I don't know if you can see me. Hi. Thank you for coming to speak with us virtually. I was just wondering, what were some of the biggest differences with the merchandising strategies between the different companies you've worked at, such as Ann Taylor, Coach, Kate Spade?
Really good question. So, Victoria's Secret Beauty, it was really the beauty model. So it was, newness was really gift sets and, like a new color launch. So that was but the core of the business was making sure that 75 to 80% was strong. So that was that merchandising strategy. For Ann Taylor, it was a true and Caroline knows this as well, we delivered product every month. So you were constantly resetting the floor. There was a basis of essentials that, you know, would have a longer life, but that was a smaller percent of the business. So it was really resetting based on seasonality, based on time of year. You know, like at holiday, you bring in a big occasion look. So that was one strategy, and then you mark it down and bring in new product. Coach and Kate Spade, because they're, you know, really anchored in accessories, there is a good foundation of the product that has lived for several years, and then it's refreshing colors within certain families. But the customer does want newness, so it's always finding that balance of what is a carryover or core, and then what is true newness. And of that newness, what can then become a core bag? So you're always kind of evaluating, you know, as we launch something, is this a 3-month life? Is this a year life? You know, in the beginning, when product launches, as a merchant, we have an idea of what we think will have a longer life, but the customer votes. So sometimes there's certain things that we think are going to be, you know, we're going to have it for the next 2 years, and she hates it. She doesn't. And then there's other things that we're like, this is going to be in and out, and it like sold out, and we're like, wait a minute, I have something here. So I think part of it is having that flexibility. And then, you know, on the ready-to-wear side in both brands, it really is more seasonal. It's more like Ann Taylor, like you're bringing in product, marking it down based on, you know, a certain amount of time on the floor at full price. So each category is a little different in terms of how it operates. And that's the fun part is, you know, these multi-category brands, you know, something like technology or watches, those have much longer lifetimes than, you know, footwear ready to wear. So it varies.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure. I think the microphone's working now. Oh, maybe not.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, global pricing seems to be a concept that is fairly new to the fashion industry. Through my personal shopping experience, I've noticed that there usually are and sometimes significant differences in pricing in different countries, which
100%.
makes sense since pricing is affected by a complex of marketing elements. So I'm therefore curious about the point of practicing global pricing.
So
When it
it's,
comes
you know,
to integrating in the marketing process.
yeah, it's, you know, it's interesting because the notion of premium pricing, it was really the high luxury players that started it. So when you think of Vuitton, Chanel, what did price outside of their home markets at a higher premium. You know, and again, I think part of it is to make product attractive within a home market, but also, you know, it's the economics of what a certain market would bear in terms of pricing. And then there's also a positioning aspect as well. So I think, I'm sorry?
I was checking the time.
Okay. But you have all those dynamics come into play, and then also exchange rates and currency comes into play as well when you think of a pricing strategy. You know, I think what's interesting about global pricing is there's a lot of conversations about what if it was flat around the world, what would that mean? You know, and we have those conversations as well. Like certain categories we might take a shallower premium than others, but a lot of it is reaction to what the brand position within a given country. So, you know, for China, for example, you know, there's a real luxury shopper in China, and a lot of these brands they're premium brands, and there's an appetite for them. So it kind of feeds into itself. But it is it was really interesting to be part of that team, and it was really interesting to see how macro factors in the world impacted currency. You know, so you would see, because that also can swing pricing as well. You know, just the relationship of, you know, the RMB or the yen or the euro to the dollar, and then what that means for pricing as well. So there's so many aspects of it. It is a puzzle, and it's one that is constantly evolving.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
I have about a couple of questions coming in from students that are abroad and on a major time change. So the first is from Meta. And her question is, you've worked in a wide array of areas like forecasting, global pricing, retail management, inventory management, to name a few. Which of them have you enjoyed working in the most, and which one challenges you the most?
I like that question. I honestly say, and I'm really loving what I'm doing now, but that's not to say I haven't loved what I've done before, but I have loved the multi-function of my role, that I'm leading a lot of different teams. I also really like being hands-on in the business. So that has been, so I think just being kind of a driver and a doer in the day-to-day, I'm really loving. I'd say what has challenged me the most, and again, isn't saying I didn't really enjoy the experience, but I think when I first started in the global role, it was a lot for me to learn. My career up until that point was so domestic based, that really learning the world, it made me such a better leader. But it was definitely, I remember just being like, whoa, I have a lot to learn here. Like, I had that, and I think you need that in your career too, that like unsettled, itchy feeling when you're like, I really don't know what I'm talking about here. And I really have to start building that muscle. So I'm so and it's interesting because that was part of the reason why I was given the opportunity, was to stretch me, and I was definitely stretched.
Yeah.
So.
My next question is from Yamini, who asks, she says, I have a minor in fashion retail, so I have a basic understanding of business. Post that, is having on-the-job learning experience first better than attending business school for my master's?
Yes. I do think, I think you'll get more out of business school if you work first. So it's not necessarily what's going to make you more attractive even though a lot of business schools will say they like to see some work experience, but you'll get more out of it if you have some real life experience under your belt. Because, I think business school teaches you a lot of things. It definitely teaches you aspects of business academically, but it teaches you, like I said, prioritization, but it also teaches you how to work in groups, because so much of a business school curriculum is you work together to solve problems. When you're in the real life work experience, you're doing that every day.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that I had worked several years before going to business school.
Yeah.
So I worked, let me think, I started in, I was working about 6-7 years before I went, which might be too long. I think you could probably like 2 or 3, you're fine.
Yeah. And it's also one of the more valuable parts of business school as a secondary degree location. You actually can learn from the people around you, which
Exactly.
is really unique.
Exactly.
Why it's so valuable.
And I take that from people who I was in school with, the people who had gone straight from undergrad. They just didn't have the gravitas
Yeah.
to a point that that to be able to learn from, but also to even think about what they wanted to learn from all of us. So.
Our next question is from Nihibot, and it's kind of a two-part question, and you answered already the first part, but how is the current coronavirus situation impacting sales and production in particular? Like, has your production been impacted yet, or do you anticipate it to be?
So we're still evaluating that. I think this is, what we were talking about before, just the reach of it is so broad. And our supplier base is also quite broad. So we're still evaluating what the impacts of that is going to be on production.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's a very big moving target.
That's a big target, yeah.
And my last question I have is from Hannah Casano. Kate Spade has such a unique and specific aesthetic that everyone is familiar with. With this in mind, how are you able to still adapt to changing trends?
That's a really good question, because I think part of it goes back to, what I said before about what I learned from Robin, knowing who you are and who you aren't. And then you're able to take that filter and bring trend into your product portfolio. So, Kate Spade, it's a really unique, it's color, there's novelty. But as shapes change and as, we're moving out of a world kind of like that structured satchel into like more attitude-y hobos, there's a place for that that could have the Kate Spade handwriting that feels uniquely Kate Spade, but also feels trend right. So I think part of it is staying true to who the core of your brand codes are, and then you're able to translate that into product trends as they come.
Great. Thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. I think I learned a lot. I'm sure all the students did as well. And hopefully, hopefully business is quick and turns around for you, and you don't go too crazy in this time period at home. But
yeah,
I imagine you probably have your daughter home from college, so that's probably a nice silver lining.
It's remote now, so.
Yeah. I'm sure she's not super thrilled, but
I know, but we're all living with it. So
exactly. Well, thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Students, if you could stay on the line, I'm gonna do a quick roll call, and as I mentioned, please turn on your camera when we do so. So Brian Barrientos.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good. Present.
Cho. There. Alyssa Davis.
Hi.
Hi. Savon Gardner.
Here.
Dale Hutchins. Dale, are you there? Okay.
We can't hear you, Professor.
You can't hear me? Chuyeon Jin.
Yeah.
Okay. Munira Khanam. Okay. Suji Kim. Hi. Suji Kim, did you answer? Timothy Lee. Sorry, that's the son. Okay. Timothy Lee, is that a no-go? Okay, Jada Moore.
Here.
Okay. Veskanda.
Here.
Okay. B. I know you made a comment.
Hi. I'm
Hi. Yinghan Kwan.
Yinghan here.
Hi. Srilaya Ranla.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, and before I move into section 102, oh no, sorry, there's a couple more. Michelle Wood.
Hi.
Hi.
How do I put on my camera?
The third button in, but.
Okay.
Nizan. Hi.
Is it coming up?
There you
Okay.
are, yep. Nizan.
Oh, sorry, I didn't turn my microphone on.
Here, hi. Chin Yozo.
I think Junho was there. She asked one of the questions. Maybe her internet wasn't really good.
Hi,
Oh, she's here.
There you are.
I'm trying to turn on my camera, but it doesn't seem to be working. Sorry.
Okay. Brian, did you have a question? Brian Barrientos. Did you have a question?
Yes. No, Tim was on. He has issues with his connection.
Okay,
So he just sent you a message just now.
thank you, Tim.
Hey, Professor, I didn't realize you had to turn on camera, so I'm here.
Oh, thank you. I see you there. Thanks. I have a call out. Someone is asking where the current issue is in BB and Blackboard.
Yeah.
The current issue test is not live yet. It will be live 5 days before the 13th. So what is that, the 8th of April? And because it's a timed test, but the state of business of fashion for 2020 is posted in both Blackboards, and it's posted under content.
What's the due date?
April 13th.
April 13th, right?
Yep, April
Okay.
13th. Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Was that you? That was your question?
Yes, it's my question.
And B, did you have a question?
Yeah, how long is the duration for the test that we have? Hours or?
I actually think I put an unlimited time, but you have 5 days to complete it.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Oh.
Honestly, if you've done the reading, the questions should be pretty easy to answer. I highly recommend doing the reading before April 8th.
Right, yeah.
We are not also meeting on the 13th, Katrina. Okay.
Professor, you didn't call me.
I'm sorry, who said that? Sun?
Yeah, Sun.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on to section 102 now.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Katrina, you just wrote something, so you're good. Paige Bartosik.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anne Galcian.
Here.
Hi.
Hi.
Ying Lin He.
Here.
Hi. Sung
Hi.
Her. Sung Hu, I think you're on. Amy Ko. Here. Hi. Hi. Okay, Mia Mahmad.
Here. I don't know if my camera's work. Oh, there it is. Can you see me? Hear me? Okay.
You're good. Dominique McNeil.
Here.
Madeline Miller. Here. Hi. Oscar Moro.
Here.
Okay. Mancha. Oh no, Manoa. Here, Jerome. I don't see her name. Okay. Ariana Sauvage.
Hi, 1 second. Oh, I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I have something marked on my calendar as being due on the 1st. I had it as the current issue, so it's now the 13th, right?
It's the 13th. Yeah, it's always been the 13th.
Okay. I found, for some reason, I found a syllabus. I've been making a to-do list with all these online classes. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
Right,
No worries.
thank you.
April 13th.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Paula Smith. Don't see her name on the list. Okay. Sun, I already got you, Sun.
Yeah.
Tadic. Tadic.
I'm right here.
Hi.
Is the camera on?
It's not.
Wait.
Yep, gotcha. Make sure one back.
Okay.
Okay. Rachel. Did you have a question too?
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you now.
Cool. Hi. Here.
Good, good. Xiao Yu, Ren. Okay, she's not in the. Okay, great. Any more questions? All right. Well, everyone have a great spring break. Kind of a weird one, but
Professor.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Hitanshi, and I don't know if you said my name, but I really couldn't.
Because the time changed. Because you told me you wouldn't be attending live, so that you're good.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I attended a live.
Got
and
you.
I
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Esther, I didn't hear my name either.
Priya, yeah, I thought you'd be watching tomorrow. So.
Okay. Okay.
I got you live. Rutuja, same thing for you.
Oh, okay, Professor. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Any other questions? All right. Rongzhen, I see your comment as well, noting that you attended live. Thank you guys for waking up early and meeting us. Have a great couple weeks, guys. See you on April 20th, but tune in for April 13th midterm.